Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow!
Okay. Couch potato kitty. Lil. Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it this way. Okay. Couch potato kitty. Lil. Yeah. 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 Oh. Good morning. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. A happy Sunday morning, and here I am with Basil, and I'm mushing up Lil, who we also refer to as Couch Potato Kitty, because she likes to include in her intensive exercise regimen lying on one side of the couch, and then getting up and walking to the other side of the couch, plopping herself down, and repeating that process back and forth through the course of the day. Yeah, back to the couch. Hey, Walter. Walter's under cover. And a very pleasant Sunday morning. Okay, kids, take it easy. Pleasant Sunday morning to you. This is Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's co-host, interpreter, and chief gopher. And Basil is, I will move. Okay, now you can see the red. You can see my hand moving the red, so you can follow the voice too. Basil likes me to wear a red tie because he says it helps him understand where that voice is coming from. And Basil wants to spend a little time this morning talking about some late breaking news from Thursday, and that's President Obama making the decision to do two things in Iraq. As you know, all U.S. combat forces have been removed from the country. We still have a staff there, but they're not of a combat nature. And that was from a treaty that was signed in 2008 by then President George W. Bush. People applauded it because we didn't want an endless war, and that accomplished that. So here we are in 2014 in August, and for about 2-3 months now, a group known as ISIS, there are not a lot of them. There's maybe 10,000 of them between Iraq and Syria, and only about 1,000 or so of those are actually in Iraq. But they're pretty much ripping through the countryside and taking stuff as they want. And the Iraqi army and military forces and the police forces are pretty much not doing anything. But recently, even the Kurds up in the northern part of Iraq have not been able to stop them. They're making inroads into the Kurdish region of Iraq, and it's looking pretty bleak there. So President Obama did order two things. He ordered an emergency airlift of food and water to a group of a few thousand people that are stranded and surrounded, and they don't want to leave where they are for fear of being murdered by ISIS, by the members of ISIS, and yet they look like they're going to be in danger of dying from either starvation or dehydration, or both, where they're at. So President Obama has ordered an airlift of supplies to them to keep them supplied with food and water, and also some limited airstrikes against ISIS as they move about the countryside. And it's hard to, with a group that's that small, it's hard to do surgical airstrikes against very limited regions, very limited locations, but they're trying to prevent them from taking over the country, while Iraq hopefully can get its military and police force act together and defend their own country. So cereal, oatmeal, accomplished. That's a daily routine for me. Basil's got his daily routine, and I mentioned earlier that Lil, aka Couch Potato Kitty, has her daily routine of walking back and forth from one side of the couch to the other, and pretty strict regimen for her. And other than that, she does a little bit of eating, not as much as she used to. Walter's the one that's been bulking up lately, and as I mentioned in an earlier episode, we have on our hands Walter is a Norwegian forest cat. And for those of you that don't know what a Norwegian forest cat is, it's sort of like it's a cat that's big and doesn't stop growing till it's about 5 years old. Walter's just a little bit over a year and a half now, and she's pretty big, and the Norwegian forest cat has a tail very much like a Maine Coon, and actually it's very furry and puffy like a Maine Coon. Couple of differences. As I say, they don't stop growing until they're about 5 years old, and Walter should be the size of about twice the size of a full-grown lion when she gets done. Looks like, but also Norwegian forest cats have the ability to climb down from a tree, or in these cats' case, they're climbing posts. Walter can climb down head first. She doesn't have to turn around and back down. She can go head first down the post, and the claws are such that she can grasp on without having the claws backwards.
Selling what I'm selling. Any more questions?
What's with the Steely Dan?
No idea. It's always playing. Seems to relax people.
Let's do this.
Yes, Les. This'll tickle a bit.
Against the carpeting that's on the posts. So anyway, so Basil wants to spend a little time talking about Iraq and opine on that a little bit. We also want to talk a little bit about this Russian notion that somehow or other Flight 370 and Flight 17 from the Malaysian Airlines are in fact one and the same. The more recent one being the first one filled with dead bodies that had been previously killed and set on automatic pilot to crash in Ukraine, and that's going to be covered probably pretty soon on Comcast by another Comcast show, Time Out with Kevin Gallagher. But on Friday night's show, we had a couple of interesting callers in regarding that. We had one caller in, Kevin Putin, and the other caller in being Vladimir Gallagher. And we're not sure, maybe they might have been one and the same person with the names a little bit twisted around. So Basil's going to talk a little bit about that. He's got some things to say about net neutrality, which is a big issue with the internet out there, and deciding whether or not to allow folks with more money to have more access and quicker access and more efficient access to the internet than those that are on the budget plan, so to speak. Also wants to talk about Facebook profiles, and maybe that's what he wants to start with first. Basil, what? Okay. Basil says, meow, brrr, meow, brrr, meow, brrr, meow, brrr, meow, brrr, meow. Said, and kids in the audience and kids at home, you need to learn to speak the language of your house cat, because as we've talked about on just about every show, that there are more homes in America that have a cat and that a cat is spoken in, more homes in America than any other language except for English. And we're not sure about that even, maybe. But there certainly are more homes with cat as their second language than there are homes with Italian or Irish or Cambodian or Vietnamese or Spanish or any of the dialogues, sub dialogues of Spanish, Portuguese. So learn cat, simple enough. Basil says, actually, let's start with Derek Cheetah, since it's his last year in playing Major League Baseball. Now, Basil, we've been through this before. We went through this last summer. It was the summer of baseball. It was the summer of Basil. It was, well, more the summer of Basil than the summer of baseball as far as Basil's concerned. But Basil, it's Derek Jeter. Basil said, meow, 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 cheetah, meow. Said, nah, cheetah, not Jeter. Well, Basil, at any rate, you wanted to make some remarks about the ball player that's been playing he's in his 20th year now. He's moved up within a few days, probably to number 6 all-time in Major League Baseball in terms of career hits. He's certainly got a lot of hits per season. In comparison, everybody that's ahead of him on the hit list has more years played than 20. About the only guy that's more impressive on the current list is a fellow by the name of Ichiro Suzuki, who in 14 years has amassed over 2,800 hits. I think he's the only player, he definitely is the only player on that list of most hits in a career that has over 200 hits in a season. Holds a record for most hits in a single season, I believe 262. He shattered the previous record. Just been an amazing hitter. Of course, he also played for I think 6 or 7 years in the Japanese baseball league. So between the two careers, the two professional careers, if you would count the Japanese league as a professional league, he's got more hits than any other ball player in the history of baseball, including the leader Pete Rose. Anything else you want to add, Basil? Okay, Basil said, meow, 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 cheetah, meow. Says, still Derek Cheetah. Okay, so, anything else you want to mention? Anything more about the comparison we were making on Friday night between Kansas, the state of Kansas, and the state of California? One being headed by a governor named Jerry Brown, that's California, and the other, Kansas, being headed by a governor named Sam Brownback, who called in on Friday and accused us of, for some reason, calling him Brown Shirt instead of Brownback. And Basil said, it's only a layer of cloth that makes a difference. Okay, so at any rate, so now he says we've been through that. California's raised taxes on businesses and their economy is going great. And Kansas, by comparison, lower taxes on businesses, and their economy's gone downhill since then. They've had to cut a lot of things out of the budget in terms of social services in order to pay for that big tax cut for corporations. And in fact, it's done the least bit of good for them. Not even the least bit of good for them. They don't, apparently, and I'm referring to corporations, they do not turn around and through some benevolence and some munificence on their part, take money that's given back to them, turn around and invest it in their business or invest it in their employees. So where to? Okay, Basil says he really wants to focus on the other stuff's important too. The two flights is important. Net neutrality says it's pretty much what's that? What is it? Basil says it's pretty much self-explanatory. Look it up, you can figure it out. It's not hard to understand that that if you have an uneven playing field for the wealthier and the poor and middle class in terms of access to the internet and access to education on the internet, that it just slants the playing field in one more important way. Okay, Facebook profiles. Okay, now Basil's got a Facebook page, and you could find it probably by putting in Facebook Basil BuddhaCat, and he's got a Facebook page that he uploads some stuff onto and talks about some different things. He incorporated that in his show fairly recently, back in January and February, by doing a special on not the Super Bowl, but he borrowed from a good friend of the show, Stephen Colbert, the term superb owl. And Basil's version, in fact, he says was a little bit better, and it seemed to play better amongst the people that saw both versions, because Basil's versions actually had the superb owl being played at not just at the Meadowlands in New Jersey, but at the Audubon Society at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And Basil's game had players from both teams going by avian-sounding names. And that seemed to play out well, especially when the starter for one of the two teams, the starting quarterback, Petrol Manning, got something got in his eyes, and he muffed a play at the beginning of the game, or he heard a bird whistle and thought it was the end of the play and set the ball down, and the other team scored, or something like that. But at any rate, so Basil, again, he wants to talk about Facebook profiles. Okay, on Facebook, of course, you're asked many things through the course of your experience on your site, on your page. Northland, 100% juice. It's my favorite and Basil's favorite. Basil's because it's red. It's the right shade of red too. Strictly cranberry juice is not the correct color, but he likes a little bit of lime in there. We've got some lime in there to give it a little extra zest. Okay, so on Facebook, you're constantly being asked to name your favorite movies, your favorite books, your favorite places. They're polling you on issues. In fact, what they're doing is they're micro marketing you. They're finding out as many things as they can about you in order to know how better to market you with products. They find out what type of movies you like. They can try to sell you things relative to those particular movies, those particular performers. If you're of one political persuasion or the other, as they determine based on your polling on issues, then they'll try to make some hay by hooking in some people into you that'll try to sell you things that seem to make sense to sell you based on those beliefs of yours. They're gathering information, and if you're concerned about the NSA spying on you, why the heck would you open up your brain and let all its contents come pouring out into the open and give all that information away? It's bad enough that the NSA looks to gather information on you to determine if you're a terrorist or a terrorist or a terrorist. Certainly, if you're concerned with that, certainly you ought to be concerned with giving away information about yourself, which allows people to more effectively peddle stuff to you. And that's Basil's feeling about that. Basil does not answer those questions. Basil likes to put his opinion out there, but he puts it in his words, not in the words of somebody profiling him by asking him questions to try to narrow down. So, kids, don't let Facebook find out too much about you. It's none of their business. Should have a private life, and Basil will work on the NSA. He's got them in his sights, and he's he's listening on them. Matter of fact, he sent a letter to the NSA a couple of years ago, asking them for any information or any files that they may have on him, and he got a nice letter back from the NSA in Maryland, and got a nice letter back that said to him, "No, we don't keep any files on you, but if we did keep files on you, then we wouldn't tell you we kept files on you." So they pretty much covered themselves both ways. You said you wanted to do some weird news too? What exactly do you mean by weird news? Okay, Basil said, meow, brrr, meow, 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 brrr, meow, brrr, meow, meow. Said, like that cute little kid that uses the same word over and over again in a matter of a couple of minutes. You mean Sean Hannity? Said, no, the other cute little weird kid. The one that was in a little 2-minute video where he used, we've forgotten what word it is, but of course Jon Stewart went from there to some little clips of Sean Hannity using the word apparently about 18 times per sentence recently, talking about the Middle East, or talking about something or other, and he just, and then of course it segued into different situations where apparently it is repeated the word, different circumstances. He just cut and pasted a little bit, spliced a little bit, and pretty much made a fool of Sean Hannity. Not that he doesn't do a fine job of that himself. And that's why we have our Screw Fox News, Here Comes Cat News show. So, gone through net neutrality. We've gone through Facebook profiling. We've gone through the flights. We've gone through weird news. We've gone through California versus Kansas state budgets and economic growth in both those states. And we've gone through Derek Jeter. Basil said, meow, brrr, meow, brrr, meow, brrr, meow. Said Derek Cheetah. So at any rate, that's our Sunday morning show, and we do recommend that you watch Fox Sunday Morning. either on TV live or catch it later on in the day, because that's a pretty good show. It's very different from the rest of what Fox News, the propaganda machine, uses. The Fox News Sunday actually asks some intelligent questions and allows people a chance to. That's because it doesn't have Sean Hannity or O'Reilly or any of those dudes that any of the kids that are on in the morning acting like idiots. So anyway, Basil BuddhaCat Presents. Have a blessed Sunday, and we'll see you next Friday night.
Dear Diary, the authorities have removed the pair of black pants from the couch. There is no longer any place for me to sleep. I have vomited 3 times in protest, but there is no sign that anything will change. My only other hope for rest is on the computer keyboard, which is nearby, but sadly no one is currently using it. I will wait. Dear Diary, my food dish is now only half full. It is obvious that I will soon starve to death. I have repeatedly tried to draw attention to my predicament with the authorities, but they are clearly either stupid, deaf, or just cruel. This may be my last entry. Dear Diary, it has come to my attention that the authorities have 2 hands, but seem to have made it the sadistic policy only to pet me with one of them at a time. Half of love is just low, which is how I feel. My spirit is breaking. Dear Diary, I've decided to plead with the authorities to rub my belly. I think it'll do me good in my current condition. I would like to receive 2 rubs exactly. A 3rd one and I will bite the shit out of them as per protocol. Wish me luck. Dear Diary, the water dish continues to vex me. The authorities seem to taunt me with this cruel liquid that has neither smell nor distinguishing visual markings. A sad anniversary. This is the 900th day that my nose has been unintentionally wetted. Dear Diary, yesterday I put in a simple request regarding the door to the garden, but seemingly out of sheer spite, the authorities refused to hold the door open long enough for me to decide whether to go outside or inside, or outside or inside. Dear Diary, the authorities have punished me for taking a crap on the living room floor. This despite my efforts to distribute the litter evenly throughout the house. I am convinced that they are madmen, devoid of reason. Dear Diary, the squirrel was back again today. It mocks me. I will try and release my mind from this torment and groom myself for 4 hours. Dear Diary, I have been stalking an insect on the wall for the past 3 days now. All of my attempts to capture it have been thwarted. However, today, on further inspection, I found out that the insect was in...
They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, on Wall Street. Meow.